When I was younger, I had a special cousin. He was a year older than I was, and we had the best time together. He was my best friend. He helped me learn to be a kinder and more empathetic person. He made me a better person. Chris has Fragile X syndrome. It is like autism, but it's genetic. It is the most significant genetic cause of autistic traits. There is a science bit about chromosomes and proteins and heredity. It is complicated, but that is not important for my purposes. Growing up, I just knew Chris as a kind, gentle person who saw things and learned very differently than I did. Chris loved to go on adventures with me. He loved the water and to go swimming. Chris loved trains and insects. I knew he was different from most of my friends and family members, but as a little kid, I liked that. I thought being different made a kid cool. As I grew up, I understood what it was that made Chris different. There were specific learning challenges that he faced that most of us did not. When Chris was anxious or really excited, his hands would flap, and he sometimes even would sort of hop up and down, like he had springs in his feet. Uncle Toby and Aunt Kate said he was going to fly away. Chris and Mir were my favorite cousins, and they were the ones that we spent the most time with. They were really more like another brother and sister, except that they were closer to my age, and therefore more enjoyable to be around than my sister Ernesto, at least until she was about 5. In high school, I understood that there were a lot of kids with special needs. Some of those kids were in my classroom. I was used to this because I had grown up with kids with special needs in my classes, and of course, I had my favorite cousin Chris. Having kids with special needs in our classrooms was called inclusion. I understood that. It made sense that everyone should be included to the best of their abilities and be given the help that they needed. So, when we got a new kid in my classroom named Chad, I didn't think anything about it. Chad was quiet. He also seemed very organized. The way Chad's book bag looked made me look willy-nilly. Chad wiggled his feet a lot. Chad reminded me of Chris. He had an aide that sat in the back of the classroom. I knew what a one-on-one support was for. Chris had one that went to school with him. I understood that the aide was there to help him with whatever his needs were. I was not the only student who understood this. Alex had a younger brother with special needs. She always had her brother Ben come over whenever Chris and Mir visited. And of course, there were the kids who didn't understand. And they could always be counted on for showing off their ignorance like a shiny medal of honor. Blake and Ted were bullies. I had learned that early on. They were part of the popular group of kids. I did not like them. I had learned to ignore them because it was a waste of time arguing with them. I had taken on teachable moments regarding these kids in the past. I don't know if that taught them anything. I knew that Chad would be on their radar when I heard this girl Brittany complaining to her friends Laura and Chelsea. "Great," Brittany sort of whispered to her friends. "We are going to be the tarred homeroom now." I didn't like that. It bothered me. I took it personally because of my favorite cousin, Chris. I was sure that someone had referred to Chris in that pejorative. I couldn't imagine how that would feel. I could tell that Alex felt the same way. Her brother had many learning challenges. I noticed her scowl as she checked on her homework for our next class. Brittany and her girls giggled about something. Alex put her pencil down and asked Chad if he would like to sit with us in our classes. Chad accepted. Chad had a slight stutter and repeated certain words. Chris did a lot of repeating as well. In science, Chad seemed to already know what we were learning. Same with math class. In biology, Chad had every answer again. I liked Chad. I admired Chad. In spite of his challenges, he knew a lot. He also ignored everything that Brittany or one of her friends giggled when he answered a question. I admired him for that as well. In the hallway, I saw Brittany talking with Ted and Blake. Crap, here it comes. While Brittany and her friends could be mean and snarky, Blake was just plain cruel. He enjoyed being that way. I knew that it was because he was a bully. I understood that the alleged best way to make a bully go away was to ignore them. It made sense. It worked for me. I didn't care what Blake said about me. I knew that I was smarter, and I had a run-in with him that it caused him to, for the most part, leave me alone. Chad was a different story. Chad was someone who was more vulnerable. And being a bully, Blake targeted vulnerable kids like a heat-seeking missile. "It's the tard class." Blake laughed as we walked by. "If I just ignore it, it'll go away," Chad said quietly to himself. "Did you just call me it?" Blake was making his way over to us. Chad didn't say anything. We just kept walking. Alex walked with him. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Blake continued his harassment. "Are you deaf as well as a retard?" Blake pronounced it retard. I hated that word. I couldn't stand hearing someone use it, especially in a deliberately hurtful way. Chad kept walking, looking at the ground and quietly repeating his mantra. "I don't like being ignored," Blake persisted. "Especially by a tard." Chad held on tightly to his books. "Cut it out, Blake," Alex roared. "Aw, Alex has a new tard boyfriend," Blake continued. "He must remind Alex of his retard brother." I couldn't take it anymore. "Blake, do you even know what retard means?" I was mad. I had almost gotten into a fight with Blake and had gotten the better of him with minimal violence. I had demonstrated that I was more skilled than he was, thanks to classes whose purpose was to teach me focus and discipline. "That?" Blake pointed at Chad, who was looking at the ground, frozen where he was. I could see how uncomfortable he was. "That is not the definition of retard," Alex said. She put her arm around Chad. "Retard is a verb. To retard is to make slow, delay the development or progress of, or to impede or hinder." Chad mumbled. I positioned myself in between Blake and Chad and Alex. "Chad just gave us the definition," I said, "and he isn't doing any of those things. You are. You are hindering Chad and Alex and me. You are the definition of retard, and you need to stop." "Whatever," Blake said and walked off, accompanied by his friends. This was his go-to response for situations that he was at a disadvantage. Blake was not just a bully. He was like all bullies, a coward. "You didn't have to do that," Chad said. "I am used to people like him." "You shouldn't be," I said. "Nobody should be used to people who treat others like that," Alex said. It is true. Nobody should be used to being treated like that. Nobody should be used to people who treat others like that. I knew that then, and I know it now. That wasn't the lesson that I learned from Chad and that day. What I did learn was that while Blake and people like him are cowards, Chad was not. Chad was truly brave and courageous. Not because of his challenges, though I am sure that contributed to his character. Chad was brave because he knew that he would encounter people like Blake, people who were cruel and would make fun of him for no reason other than to be cruel. And yet, Chad still went to school and lived in a community that he would have to face such people, and he did so with grace and kindness. People like Chad and my cousin Chris and Alex's brother are truly brave, and they set an example for all of us to be better people. Hey, thank you for watching. Please click on the right to subscribe if you liked the video. And please don't forget to click on the bell icon when you subscribe so that you can be notified when we upload a new video. Watch more videos on the left, including our playlist. Thank you.